this is without question one of the most even Super Bowls that we've had in a long
Agreed.
time. And we kind of talked about this last year. We were like really debating which way to go. We did ultimately feel the Rams were the team of destiny and the better team at the time. But this year, it's even that much tougher. I mean, it's just wow. I could imagine 50 people picking the Chiefs and 50 people picking Eagles.
Agreed.
So what is your stats telling you? Everything that you've got with the Playbook Super Bowl newsletter and everything that you've dived in and all the props and all the stats and everything, Mark. What does it tell you about who you think has the edge in the game?
Well, as we mentioned before, this game is incredibly even. From their records to the points they scored, which are identical to the amount of Pro Bowl players they've had. They're both number one seeds. Their records against common opponents are almost mirror-like against one another. So it's kind of hard to put an edge between them two when you're putting them side by side that way. The differentiator to me, personally, is the defense. But the defense is the two football teams. And, I love the fact that the number one passing quarterback in yards for the season in the Super Bowl has never beat the Super Bowl. It's had the number one pass defense like the Golden Eagles do. They're going to see a defense unlike any they've seen here if they played to their level, obviously. The Philadelphia defense. And I think the combination of the running game and the defense gives Philadelphia the edge for everything that it is that I do.
Yeah, that's and I'm also going to be very intriguing to see the matchup between the Chiefs supposedly have a top offensive line. Now, I don't think man for man they're elite, but they're a very good offensive line, especially in the middle of that group. And the Eagles, again, have one of, if not the best defenses because they rotate guys left and right on that defensive line. And like Ryan said, they're all healthy. So they got all their best guys out there. That's what's going to be the matchup. And you could possibly say the same thing on the flip side because we know how good the Eagles' offensive line is. And the Chiefs are going to have to put a lot of pressure on the Eagles in order for, Hurst to feel a little bit uncomfortable. So is that, though, where the edge lies, Ryan, is that the Eagles are just that much they're just a little bit better or that much better. They're so good both on the offensive line and the defensive line.
I don't know if I agree with that either, Craig. I got to tell you, look, the Eagles are built offensive line and defensive line. That's their strength. They've had two guys on each of those lines there for 10 years each, maybe more, 12 years each, with Kelsey and Lane Johnson, with Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. So then they're so deep on the defensive line with Brandon Graham coming off the bench with 4 guys with 10 sacks each. But the Chiefs' offensive line is no slouch. I mean, this isn't the Chiefs' offensive line that, forced Patrick Mahomes to run for 497 yards behind the line of scrimmage when they couldn't hold up against the Bucs. This is a much different. This is Orlando Brown, who said this week, I was brought here to win a Super Bowl. This is Joe Tooney, who signed an $80 million contract. This is Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. Creed Humphrey might be the best young center in the NFL. This is a much better version of the Chiefs' offensive line than Patrick Mahomes had the last time America saw him in a Super Bowl.
No, and that's a great point because, Mark, you were talking about that on the show yesterday with Victor on Playbook Experts' YouTube channel about Patrick Mahomes' Super Bowl record and his stats. And I think it is a little bit unfair to grade his stats in the Tampa Bay game because of how atrocious their offensive line situation was.
Yeah, it was what it was, and he obviously wasn't able to perform. He started 2 Super Bowl games, and he's had 2 terrible passer ratings in both of those games. It's 64.2 combined in his career. He was 78-1 against Frisco and 52-3 against Tampa Bay. So will it get any better in this particular game against this defense? That's my main question because he's going to see a pass rush unlike he saw in those first 2 football games. That's my main concern. The other little thing that I'm looking at here, Ryan, is today is the day, and I don't think they've announced it yet, that Patrick Mahomes is going to be named the MVP for the league.
Later tonight.
Or tonight, yes, exactly. And from a study that I did, there have been 21 quarterbacks in the Super Bowl that have been MVP quarterbacks, and they have not fared well in these games. They've lost more than 2 out of 3 games.
Is that like the Heisman jinx?
Sort of like the Heisman jinx, in a shorter period of time, if you will. Their average QB rating is 85.3 in those particular football games. Do you see Mahomes succumbing to something like this, or do you think his talent just throws it out the window and says, "I'm Patrick Mahomes," and you can stick those stats right up where the sun don't shine?
Yeah, I like stats of head-to-head matchup. I like stats of players in the game. Historical stats don't mean much to me. What Ken Anderson did in the Super Bowl when he was an MVP has no effect on what Joe Burrow did in the Super Bowl. And what Patrick Mahomes is going to do in the Super Bowl as an MVP. To me, one doesn't have anything to do with the other. I get it. That is a trend. But to me, it's much more Patrick Mahomes against the Eagles than it is what some quarterback in the 70s did when he was the MVP.
Let me leave you with this, and you might maybe be able to share the story. But Joe Namath, when he proclaimed that the Jets were going to win the Super Bowl, and the Jets won the Super Bowl, they didn't win the Super Bowl because of Joe Willie Namath, okay? He did not have a good game. It was Earl Morrall who stunk the joint up. Is what happened. Earl Morrall, quarterback rating was 4.4.
And he also ran the ball well.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But the turnovers were the big thing. Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm just saying that Joe Willie's proclamation wasn't what he proclaimed to be. That's all.
The Chiefs could win the game because Chris Jones dominates the Eagles' offensive line. I mean, they don't have to win because of Patrick Mahomes. They could win the game because one of their, Frank Clark has a sack fumble touchdown. They have other good players. I mean, they could win the game because Sky Moore has a punt return like he did at the end of the Bengals game. There's other ways to win that aren't Patrick Mahomes. But I will say the Eagles, if you threw out the quarterbacks, the Eagles have the much better team. So there's much more ways. The Eagles have the better running backs. The Eagles have the better secondary. So the Eagles have more ways to win the game.
And the other thing that we'll have to see, and I think this is why I think it's important that the Chiefs get off to a good start if they win this game, is that they do have the advantage as far as coach and quarterback Super Bowl as well, Super Bowl experience. So we don't know how that's going to come into play. Maybe it comes into play early. Maybe it takes Hurst a little while to kind of get the nerves to unsettle. And that's why I think if the Chiefs win this game, I really think they need to have the lead early. I think they have to take advantage of that early situation that most of these Eagles, especially the quarterback, have not been through before. If the Eagles get up to a high-flying start, I just think it's going to be really hard for the Chiefs to win that game. Because, again, I think the nerves will be gone.
An Eagle defense that would go out and support that lead is primarily what would happen, right?
Yeah, because and you know what? And I know we say this all the time, but these two teams are not running teams, but it just shows you that chances are, if one of the teams has a good running day, probably going to win. Because they're so good in the passing game that if you allow them to run the game as well, you probably have no chance. So
Philadelphia were 14-0 this year when they ran for 100 yards or more. That's a big stat. All three of their losses came when they didn't run the ball for 100 yards. So that could be a telltale in this game as well.
Is there any talk? A couple more things before we close this Super Bowl preview show. Any talk about Andy Reid going up in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles? I mean, how ironic is that really? Is it just so far along? Is it just so many years ago that nobody's really talking much about it? Or is that really is something that they're talking about in Philadelphia?
I don't know what they're talking about in Philadelphia, but in Arizona, it's the number 2 storyline.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were kidding at first. If he gets asked about it like 7 times a day.
I stay away. Trust me, I haven't watched 1 minute of Super Bowl coverage. It's just I don't need to do that. So
he gets asked 7 to 10 times a day about coaching the Eagles, his departure from the Eagles, coaching Kelsey and Fletcher Cox and Graham. No, he gets asked it's probably the second biggest storyline here for sure is Andy Reid's history against the Eagles. He speaks so fondly of Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman. And don't forget, Kansas City's general manager, Brett Veach, is a former Eagles front office guy too. So there's a lot of embedded between the two franchises.
Interesting sidebar note there, Ryan. Andy Reid has coached 6 games in his career, 3 with Philadelphia against Kansas City, which he won, and 3 with Kansas City against Philadelphia, which he's won. So Andy Reid has won all 6 of those games against each of those 2 football teams.
That's a great nugget. That's a great stat.
Yep. So only Andy Reid will beat Andy Reid. Okay.
So, and knowing the relationship you mentioned that Andy Reid just talked about, do you think that it's one of those, of course, you know, if he wins the Super Bowl, it's going to be extra special and sweet that he did it against the Eagles? Or do you think he just has so much respect for them that, yeah, it's about winning Super Bowls. It's not about sticking it to the Eagles.
I think somewhere in between. I mean, I think in his heart of hearts, yeah, of course, the team that fired you, it would be sweet to beat them in a Super Bowl. But it is not, he does not have the animosity towards them that, like, you know, Bill Belichick has towards the Jets, or that, you know, I don't know, Mike McCarthy has towards the Packers. Like, it's more respect than hate. But yeah, sure, of course, you know, of course, would you rather beat the team that fired you, or is it more meaningful to beat the, I don't know, the Cowboys in the Super Bowl? It probably is more meaningful to beat the Eagles.
All right, let's go with picks. So I think based on our conversation, I'm going to say Chiefs, Eagles.
I took the Chiefs.
You did take the Chiefs. Wow. Okay. Wow. It sounds like you were taking the Eagles.
Never bet against Patrick Mahomes. I took the Chiefs 24-20. I think the game honestly is going to be decided by not Travis Kelce, not Chris Jones, by somebody doing something great, like by some version of who was the tight end who threw the Philly special touchdown pass
for the Eagles?
Yeah,
not Zach Ertz.
Trey Burton.
Oh, well, one of those guys, you mean? Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm. Yeah, by some lesser known player doing some sort of trick play, whether maybe it's Kenneth Gainwell on a halfback option or something like that. Maybe it's Sky Moore on a punt return. Some sort of bold call, trick play, fake field goal, fake punt, reverse, something like that decides this game. Both these coaches are fourth down gambling play artists. I think some variable gets injected into the game, and that gives some team the lift, and then you bet on the best quarterback, and that's Patrick Mahomes.
So, Mark, you're the only one. You taking the Eagles?
I'm going to be with the Eagles here. Now, I've bet against Patrick Mahomes in the 2 Super Bowl games that he's played in and cashed both of those tickets. I'm not going to back away here right now.
Well, you're talking about with the spread. I'm talking about who's winning the game.
That's
right?
true.
So.
Okay. But still, for Philadelphia to beat the spread here, they're going to have to win this game, number one, obviously, and then win it by a field goal. The other thing that I'm sort of fading here is that the last 8 times that number 1 seed has played number 1 seed in the Super Bowl, the favorite has lost all 8 times in a row. That favors your Patrick Mahomes side of the game.
Wow.
But I'm going to fade that as well. I'm going with the defense in the running game. Give me Philadelphia.
Okay. And can you leave us with your favorite prop? I was listening to all your props, and you can get all those props on Marc's Playbook Experts show. We have a link to it on this show, on this page, in the description area, so check that out. My favorite prop, I believe it's, you said the last 13 teams who scored last won the game.
It's 13 in a row, 15 of the last 16. The team that has scored the last score of the game has won the game. Exactly right.
And the number is what, around minus 150 or minus 160?
Oh, it's closer to minus 200.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very, very popular, very, very popular prop.
Can you give us one that's closer to even?
Well, I would say, will there be a missed extra point in the game? Everybody anticipates with the longer extra point, there's going to be a missed extra point. only 2 times in the last 21 Super Bowls has there been a missed extra point. So don't fall for that. I would say no on missed extra point.
And that's about even.
That's pretty close to even. Yeah.
All right. So no missed extra point. I like that. And did you come across any yourself, Ryan?
Props?
Yeah.
No, I'm not a props guy.
So you didn't hear? I know, neither am I. I usually just, this is the only time of year I ever actually dip my toes into any of them. So, and that's probably the only one I'll do, is the one that Ryan, that Mark just mentioned. I did do overtime, though, the year that the Patriots went to overtime. I did do that one because I did it like every year for like 3 years. I figured one of these years they're going to go to overtime, and I think they were like 8-1 to go to overtime. So
that's the only year they ever did it. Correct.
Yeah. So, but can't really do that anymore. But who knows? Maybe we'll see that again on Sunday. Ryan, appreciate it. I know you're real busy. Obviously, you're there at Radio Row. What's the storylines? What are you working on? Anything in particular for the New York Post?
I did a big Jordan Mailata piece today. I was proud.
Oh, did we just miss him? This is like that satellite hookup.
I would say if we missed him, we got the best of Ryan because we had him for pretty much the whole show.
Okay. Well, look, if he pops on while we're closing the show, we'll see. Oh, there you are, Ryan. So you were saying we missed you. You said that you had this report, this article that you're just putting out there with Mailata. Oh, we missed him. All right. Anyway, let me. Well, there's nothing I can do. You guys are hooked together. All right, Mark. Anything else besides the fact that it's Thursday, right? So there's still a few days left for the Playbook Super Bowl Guide newsletter.
There is. You can download the Super Bowl Guide newsletter with all these great props, all these stats, everything we're talking about here. It's available online at playbooksports.com. And also, an interesting sidebar note of something that I'm doing. It's called the WIN Report, W-I-N, which is an acronym for What's Important Now. And if you go to playbooksports.com and click on the WIN Report, you'll find a treasure trove of great stats and things you didn't know. So if you're at playbooksports.com, check out the WIN Report.
Awesome. And again, description area, we'll have a link, very easy. Click that. You go to the show that Mark did with Victor yesterday. Andy Iskoe was on that as well. Jim Feist was on that one as well. So just really a great Super Bowl preview, a broadcast video. You can check that out. It gives you just tons of props and stats and trends and everything that you want to get ready for the Super Bowl. So, Mark, we'll see you on the other side when we talk a little bit about wrapping up the season, including the Super Bowl. But more importantly, the next time we talk, we'll be talking about college basketball. So the transition will take full effect by the time we talk again.
We'll be hooping it up, Greg. I look forward to that.
Awesome. From Marc Lawrence, Ryan Dunleavy, live at Radio Row down at Super Bowl headquarters in Arizona. I'm Greg DePalma. We'll see you next time.